Finally, we are back and we are going to be finally doing animation. So, sorry for taking so long to make this next part of the series, but today we are going to be making the Mandalorian walk. So this is the first step in making an animation, I would say. Once you learn how to walk, you can make your character do a scene and make a story out of it. So simple animations are easy. Once you figure out how to keyframe, you can watch really basic Blender animation tutorials, but for the case of this video, I'm going to assume that you already have a basic understanding of how keyframing works, on how armatures work, on how bones work, because we're going to be diving deep into that in this episode. So first off, what you're going to do is select the armature, click over into object mode, and change it to pose mode. And if you've ever done any kind of animation before, you're familiar with how an armature works. You select a bone, and you can click R to rotate it, or in some cases you can click G to move him. And in the case of this rig, some of these bones are conveniently locked out on some of the location. For example, this arm is locked out on all location axes, which means if you click G to move, it will rotate because it is not able to move. But if I were to unlock all of these, I could hit G and I could move it out of the socket. So just for this beginner's walk cycle, I'm going to leave them all locked. But once you become more comfortable with the rig, you'll figure out which axes are meant to be rotated for what kind of movements, and then you can decide based on what you want the character to do. If you want the arm to, for example, you can do whatever you want with if you unlock it. But for this case, I'm going to leave them all locked. And if I want to move the bone back to its original location, it's super simple. All you have to do is click Alt R. That undoes all rotations. It sets it back to its original rotation point. And Alt G will move it back to its original location point, which is exactly what I need. There are many ways you can make a character walk. I'm going to be showing you multiple different methods. This first one I'm going to show you is the cycle version of how you can make a walk. So what this would be is making a cycle and then continuously looping that cycle over and over again, so you don't have to continually reanimate the cycle. But for a cycle, he'll be walking on the spot, and you'll have to be moving this master bone across. Oh, well, the cape's not parented there, but I can fix that easily. So this way is the quickest and dirtiest way to do it. It will create foot sliding all over the place unless you get really careful with how much you move the master bone. And if you do all that, it just becomes even harder than doing it another way, which I will explain afterwards. But for now, I'm going to start off showing you this simple way on how you can make a character walk forward using a cycle. So let's get going here. So a cool trick you can do is you can select using this gizmo thing up here. You can select different viewpoints. I can select the back, I can select the front, I can select the top, I can select the bottom, select the other side. So for a walk cycle, I'm going to select the one of the sides so that I can really see the walk, and I can, for example, when the foot is contacting with the ground, I can see if it's too low or too high. So let's get into this. So how we make this walk cycle is we have multiple different poses that are continuously looping to create the animation. So the first pose that we're going to create is right in the middle of a person's stride. So to do this, I'm going to select the IK bone on the bottom here. I'm going to click G, move it forward, and I'm going to move it about there. I'm going to select the other IK bone, click that, click G, and then move it back. So this is about, for the feet, this is about right in the middle of the minifigure's stride, which is exactly what we need for our first position. Now I can go ahead and do the arms. Left foot is forward, which means the right arm would go back. So I move it back, and so here's our first problem. The Mandalorian has a cape, and when the arm goes back, it goes through the cape. Fixing this is a whole other video, a whole other complicated thing that I myself haven't still figured out properly yet. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to delete, or at least I'm going to hide the cape, or maybe I'll just leave it for now and it'll go through. That's the left arm. The right arm seems to be already in a decent position. I'll select it anyways, and yeah, I'll leave it there. And that's our first position. We can move the torso forward as well, so he's leaning forward a bit. And then notice I can use this bone to move him side to side, which would create the walk cycle. Look at that. But that's the second method. We're not going to be using that for this method because we wouldn't be able to loop it that way. So I'm going to leave it there, and I'm actually going to go over to the bone. I'm going to unlock the Y, which means I can move it up. So now, if you can see on the line, I can move it up until he's on just above the ground there, so he's not going through the floor. So there's our very first position of our walk cycle. To keyframe this, we are going to go to the dope sheet on the top, click A to select all of the bones, click I, insert keyframe menu, lock rot, which means location rotation. Click that, and we have our first set of keyframes inserted at the top. A cool trick you can do is down in this left keying menu, you click on keying and active keying set, and you type in lock rot. And then over here, you click this button, auto keying. Every single time you move the a bone, it'll automatically create a keyframe for you for location rotations. For example, I move forward 2 frames and I were to say rotate the torso way back, and as you can see, it creates a new keyframe. So that's good, but we don't want that now. I'm going to delete that, and we're going to create our cycle. So let's say we want our entire stride, one stride to last, say we'll go 12 frames. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Sorry, that's 13 because I counted from 1. So all we're going to do is literally flip what we have now. So we're going to click on our bones, which are kind of hard to click onto. Okay, I'm going to get out of orthographic view, click on one of them. I'm going to go back, click over here, and I'm going to drag this foot forward until this one. And I'm going to go ahead and just flip all of the movements. The arm as well. Alright, once you've flipped all of the arms and legs, keep the torso in the same spot. That's very important because he's going to go down in the middle, then come back up to where he is. It's the same position. So click A again and insert a keyframe for all of them by clicking I. So now, as you can see, an animation has been created. So that's a basic animation, but obviously that does not look very good. Something about it is off. And the reason why it looks a little bit off for a step is because both legs are crossing each other at the same time, like he's sliding. So to do this, we're going to go to the middle frame at 6. I'm going to click the which leg is it? So if we're stepping with our left foot, that means the right foot will be hanging back. So I'll select the right foot and I will drag it back a slight bit, like how it would realistically be. So now that looks pretty good. Now it looks like he's taking a step. To go even further, we can adjust the torso. We can make him lean a little bit down. And we can also, what we should do is move this down so he's flat on the ground. Like so. Now that looks pretty good. He might be even. And then I'm going to go, so that's one step. But in order to make it a cycle, we actually have to create 2 steps and then loop that so that he comes back to his original spot where his left foot is forward. So I'm actually going to do is I'm going to click up here on arm interaction, click this keyframe, which will highlight all the keyframes. I'm going to click Shift D and move all of them forward, 12 frames forward, and I think it's about 12. So we're going to be at frame 24. I nailed it. So we're at frame 24 now. So now this is our loop. And now we have to do the same thing that we did before with the leg passing underneath, or passing behind, sorry. But this time it's the other leg, that would be the left foot, that's going to be hanging back. And also going to move this down. And what I could do is I could move it down now, or what I'm actually going to do is I'm just going to duplicate this keyframe here, which will bring it back to the exact same spot as it was in our last frame. Now we have him going up and then down again. He's going a little bit backwards, which is a little bit odd. That's okay. Fix that. Beautiful. That looks pretty good. Now we gotta do the torso as well. I'll click the torso, and I'll find the torso bone is highlighted here. I'll click Shift D over here, and now the torso is also going down. There we have it. That's one full loop. And we can continuously loop this by either selecting all of these and then clicking Shift D to duplicate them over and over and over. Or we can go into the graph and actually add a cycles modifier. But I don't really like doing that because you can't decide, well you can, but it's a little bit harder. You can just decide on where it would end if you want your character to stop. So I just prefer just to actually physically duplicate the keyframes, but you can try out the graph modifier if you want to. So now we have our character walking, but he is walking on the spot. So how do we make him move forward? Simple, with the master bone. Now all we have to do is animate the master bone. But since we selected all of the, we clicked A to select all of the bones before, and we made keyframes for all of them. There are keyframes on the master bone currently, so I'm going to highlight those and I'm actually going to delete them all. So that the master bone has no keyframes, so we can now animate the master bone. And I'm going to click on the master bone. I'm going to start with a keyframe, and I'm going to skip to the end, and I'm going to move him. I'm just going to guess. I'm going to move him to here, and it's going to automatically create a keyframe. So before I even play this, I'm going to say right now the foots are going to slide and it won't look good. Doesn't look too bad actually, but as you can see, he actually starts slow, he speeds up, and then he comes to a halt. That is because of the interpolation mode of the keyframes. To change this to linear, I'm going to click T to bring up the interpolation mode. I'm going to change it. It's on Bezier right now, which as you can see from the little logo there. It's like easing in and easing out with animation. But in this case, we don't actually want easing in and easing out because he's walking in a linear constant velocity. So I'm going to change that to linear. And there, he should be walking in a nice constant velocity. And that actually doesn't look too bad. But if we analyze this with the cursor, and I select where his foot is, he's sliding. But if you're just looking for a quick and dirty way to do it, then this works. So that's method one of animating a walk cycle. Now I'm going to show you the method that I actually use, and the one that works the best for making the foots plant exactly where you want them and not slide. This is actually why we chose to download from the Blunderbricks website the fancy rig, the IK rig, because it has these foot plant things. And what you can do with these foot plant things is you can take this bone and you can move him forward, and look at that, he's literally making a foot plant. That's exactly what we want. So we're going to do that. We're going to use this method to create a walk cycle. So now what I'm going to do, bye every single keyframe. I'm sorry. Alt G, Alt R. Now we're back to square one. I'm going to start off in the middle like I did. Move forward. Move forward. This method is far superior. Okay, that's position one. Now, we remembered that our cycle was 12 frames last time, so we'll try to mimic that for this. So I'm going to select this bone and I'm going to move forward 3 frames. So because it's 2 steps, each step will be 6 frames. So half a step would be 3 frames. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to move forward until he's on the ground. I'm going to go back to this X view and make sure he's perfectly on the ground. Boom. Doesn't get any better than that. So as you can see here, he was a little bit below the ground here, so I'm going to move him up again, sorry. Boom. That's a step. That's half a step. Now, I'm going to select this foot, And the frame right before he plants down, I'm going to make a keyframe for it. So that, and I go 4 frames forward because we're 1 frame behind. So from 3 frames from here would be 4 frames from the keyframe. 1, 2, 3 to 6, which is what we want, and move him forward so that he's going up. Now he's going boom and boom. And then 1, 2, 3, we want to have him in the middle again. So voila. That is 1 step, but this is only the legs. So now I gotta do 2 steps. So then 3 frames from here, 1, 2, 3. Bring him over, plop him down on the line, rewind 1 frame, select the leg, insert a keyframe, go 4 frames forward because we were 1 frame behind, bring him up to the middle, boom, and then go 1, 2, 3 to bring him back to the original set. And there we have it. 1, 2. So it's a little janky, obviously, because the arms aren't moving. Neither is the torso. So let's do that. We'll do the torso first. The torso starts up here. We go 1, 2, 3. His foot's planted on the ground, and when you plant on the ground, he's going to lean a little bit forward. And then there's that. And then back up to the middle. And we're going to select that old torso rotation, so he's back up to the middle. And 1, 2, 3. Down again to that same. Duplicate that keyframe, so he's back down. So he's going down, up, down, up. Duplicate that. Boom. And the reason we're duplicating them is that so that if, for example, say I didn't duplicate them and I happen to put them a little bit further down, say I put them like here, and when I loop it, it would look really bad because it would be like this. There would be a jump. So they have to be the exact same so that there would be no jump and it would be a smoothless transition to the next loop. Because this is also technically a cycle, but it's a different kind of cycle of walk. So now we're going to do the arms. And then I'm going to duplicate these keyframes, like I said, with the torso, so that his walk cycle is complete. He's obviously walking a little bit. Say I wanted, yeah, so he's walking pretty fast. He's walking faster than the other one. I don't know what I did with my math there, but he's walking a little bit faster. So what I can do is I can click A to select every keyframe. Oh, one more thing. On the very end, I'm going to click all of the bones and insert keyframes. This is very important for when you loop it so that the keyframes of all the bones, like say the torso, don't kind of get mixed up with each other. You gotta it's kind of like closing off each endpoint so that they loop properly. So say I wanted to make it slower, 2 times slower, I just click all the keyframes by hitting A, I click S for scale, and I click 2 to scale it by 2. So now he's walking 2 times slower. That's obviously looks like he's walking slow motion, so I'm going to scale it by 0.5 to back where we were, and I'm going to scale it by, say, S, I'll go 1.2. So he's a little bit slower. But he's still moving at a good pace, which looks normal. Oh, another thing you can do is you can mess around with the frame rate. I think this is 24. Yeah, this is 24. What I actually normally do is 12, which would be like animating on 2s, which means that in a regular 24 frames per second, which is what movies are shot at, every 2 frames is the same. So it's basically the equivalent to 12 frames per second, if that makes sense. So I just like to do 12 because less frames to render and it looks like stop motion. So now he's super slow because it's half the speed. So I'm actually going to scale it by 0.5 to match what it was at 12. So look at that. Now it looks like stop motion. That is pretty cool actually. So there we have it. That's one loop. And you're thinking, okay, well we can just loop this and then all the foot plants will be perfect. Oh, well, let's try it. See what happens. So I loop it. Oh, forgot to say this as well. You also have to insert a keyframe for the frame before the ending because this is where it's starting again. So you need 1 frame to close it off. if that makes sense. So just do that and you'll see why. So if I click A and I shift D this and I duplicate it, we have him walking and he goes back to where he's starting. So that's technically a loop. That's what we want. But he's just doing that. He's not moving forward. He's going back to where he started. So how can we make him go forward continuously? Good question. I have the solution for you. I'm going to duplicate this so he's walking for a long time. The solution, once again, lies in the master bone. Because the master bone is what moves everything. So select it, delete all of its keyframes, insert a keyframe at the start, fast forward to the end of the first cycle before he reverts back to where he is, insert a keyframe, move forward. Actually, no, don't move forward yet. Click the cursor, zoom in. That's where he was. So if I move forward, he goes back to where he was before, but G, move him back to where he is now with the master bone. And look at this. That's 2 steps. Just keyframing the master bone over and over again. So now, keep doing this. Alright, so now I've got all of them done here. So he has a good walk going on here. That looks a lot like stop motion. But let's say you wanted him to stop walking, shoot his gun at an enemy. How would I do that? Well, now you just gotta animate him because it's all just keyframes. What you can do to make him stop is you can just click on this bone. I can go 1, 2, 3. We'll go 5, 6. Just to make it so he's stopping a little bit slower than when he was walking. Plop him down. So he stopped, and then I can move this foot in 1, 2, 3. And I click and drag him in there. Drag him in. Drag him in. There, he stopped. He stopped walking, and now we're gonna make him shoot. That is part 3 of making Blender animations, or Lego animations in Blender. This is our first step into animation with a quick walk. Obviously, there is so much more you can do with animation, so we'll have a few more episodes on animation, and then we'll get into rendering, and then you can get on your way with making animations. And obviously, I'm taking a long time to make these tutorials, so I suggest while you're waiting for the next one, experiment. Watch Blender tutorials online that maybe aren't related to Lego, but you'll be surprised. Watching those basic Blender beginner tutorials on animation, on rigging, on just how to use Blender with the interface, those will be extremely valuable in making your workflow faster and just easier. While you're waiting, just keep watching Blender tutorials. There's like a gazillion of them online on YouTube. So until next time, good luck.